external to their own department. Inside, they have about 100 PR agents. They spend $60 million a year, $100 million a year on outside PR agencies to spread their lies about global warming and the wonderful work that they're not doing. So if the EPA is spending a couple of $100 million a year on PR, how much are they spending for Boss Tweet in the White House? What do you think the PR cost is for Barack Obama to get away with his lies and his subterfuge? $1 billion a year? $500 million a year? $600 million a year? $400 million a year being spent on putting out the big lie, PR agencies? We don't know. That's how he gets away with it. Virtually everything you read in the newspapers about Obama is a lie. Virtually every picture taken of him is a lie. Virtually everything about him. He may as well be the virtual president. He may as well be a fabrication. He is the Capricorn 1 of presidents. He is President Zero in a government zero. I want to talk about the church. I want to talk about geocentrism. I want to talk about heliocentrism. Big words, I know, but they're really simple words. But they tell us everything we need to know now about the big lie. Way back when, going back to when the church taught that the earth was the center of the solar system, it was known as a geocentric position. Geo meaning earth. They taught that the earth was the center of our solar system and that all the planets in the sun revolved around the earth. That was the church's official teaching. And then science came along, elementary science at that, in the Renaissance, and they learned through Galileo and others that, it was Copernicus first, by the way, argued that the sun was the center of the solar system. And that's known as heliocentrism. Helio comes from Helios, the sun god. And we all know that they were right. We know that Copernicus was right. And we know that Galileo, who popularized the idea of a heliocentric solar system, was basically criticized and treated very badly, forced into exile as a result of it. And so the church scored a great triumph in its expulsion of him and the Jews, by the way, from Spain. Incidentally, Galileo was born Jewish, but converted to Protestantism. Then he became Catholic. Then he became a Jesuit. He had to, in other words, in order to survive in his time. The church was so monstrous and so powerful that they expelled the Jews from Spain, and they forced hundreds of thousands of Jews to convert to Christianity at that time. But that was the beginning of the unraveling of the power of the church, and that was the beginning of the modern Western world. What does that have to do with what's going on today? Well, I'll tell you, it has nothing directly to do with it, but it has everything to do with truth and lies. It's the struggle of the truth versus the big lie of the power-mad psychotics who are running the West. Those who have subscribed to the theory that open borders are good for nations. The man behind all of this is none other than the most evil man in the history of the modern world, in my opinion, George Soros. George Soros has spent hundreds of millions of dollars, if not more, breaking the borders of Europe. According to the president of Hungary, he is the man behind the broken borders in Europe. One man has done this damage to the nationalities of Europe. One man alone, according to the president of Hungary. George Soros, as you well know, funds many of the leftist hit groups in the United States of America. Front groups that you think are mainstream and legitimate are really not. They're Stalinist hit groups, such as Media Matters, funded by him. Groups that work for Hillary Clinton, groups that work for Obama, groups you would never believe work for him. And the message is the same. Anyone who opposes the dissolution of their own nation, the dissolution of their borders, language, and culture is a fascist, a Nazi, a racist. And many of you have been silenced by these evil people for fear of being called those names, because you don't want to be excommunicated. You don't want to be treated like Galileo was treated. And then they find a pope, and they find a pope somewhere in South America. He's not a pope at the time. A left-wing fanatic all of his life, a left-wing operative, began as a bartender. I don't hold that against him. I would say that Pope Francis's history as a bartender is actually the stellar moment of his life. If I were to say it was the best part of his life, he was probably more honest as a bouncer than he is as a pope. At least he was true to himself, the thug that he obviously is underneath that persona of the Mr. Nice Guy, constantly meddling in the United States, constantly coming here and telling us to break our borders with Mexico, constantly telling us we're evil and mean because we don't take in more people from Mexico, El Salvador, Guatemala, etc. No, he was a very nice bouncer because he was more honest man. So they find this guy in South America and they elevate him all the way up. And for the first time in 1,200 years, listen to me. Hey, don't turn the dial. For the first time in 1,200 years, we have a non-European pope. How did he get to that position? And how did he suddenly become an expert on climate science when he has no training whatsoever in climatology? He knows nothing about climate except that when it rains, his aides hold an umbrella over his head. And why would the Pope push this theory of man-caused global warming, that we're dirty, filthy, rotten creatures destroying the earth? What is he after? Money. Follow the money. It's always about the money. So should Merkel and other EU gangsters be tried for crimes against their nations in a new People's Nuremberg trial? Wow, what a loaded question that is. Where'd that come from? Should Merkel of Germany and other EU evil union gangsters be tried for crimes against their nations in a new People's Nuremberg trial, says an American talk show host. He asks the question, should there be a People's Nuremberg trial in which Angela Merkel is tried for crimes against her nation? And while you're at it, how about a People's Nuremberg trial here in the United States of America for the gangsters in the United States government who are sacking the Treasury and invading the nation? How about that? A People's Tribunal. It's legal. You hold it, you set it up, and you hold a People's Tribunal. It could even be done digitally. For God's sakes, I could do it. I could do a video feed on it. We get several judges. We present the evidence. We have defense counsel for those we are accusing of committing crimes against America. It wouldn't be too hard to prove that they're criminals and gangsters, would it? Well, let's start with the obvious. Let's start with a few senators and congressmen from San Francisco whose fortunes went up 100-fold since they became politicians on the national stage. How did they make so much money? How did their families benefit so well? You can't put two and two together? You mean because they don't have an R next to the name, they can't be corrupt? I'll be right back.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
The Savage Nation is sponsored by Swiss America, the only company I trust with my financial future. Call 800-289-2646 or Swiss America. How is it that a man can go around the Constitution on a daily basis, go on to a television show and make jokes about it, and have a group of stoneheads laugh when he talks about violating the Constitution? How? Okay. Should we have a tribunal? Should we have a People's Nuremberg trial here in the United States of America? It wouldn't be Nuremberg, Germany. We'd have to pick a town, let's say Wichita trial. That kind of works. A Wichita trial for crimes against America that is held digitally with a defense counsel, a prosecution, and a jury of 3 people. And I run it digitally. Now let's look at the Veterans Administration. We know it's corrupt. We've heard about it. We've heard about veterans dying in the hallway. We've heard how corrupt the officials are. It's out of the Soviet Union, where they're stealing money by the billions of dollars in ways you could never imagine while vets are dying. They were brought before Congress yesterday in a hearing. Do you know what they did? VA officials plead the fifth and refuse to testify. Now, are you telling me, you liberals, that you thought you'd grow up in a society where government officials would be able to get away with pleading the fifth and refusing to testify? Is that what you had in mind for a free and open society? First, the IRS commissioner wouldn't testify and pled the fifth. Remember that last year? Now Obama's corrupt VA officials are pleading the fifth. This is something only gangsters did in my day and age. Only in the 1950s, only mafia figures pled the Fifth Amendment. I never heard it done otherwise. And people said, oh, God, he's guilty. He's guilty if he's pleading the fifth. Because we had newspapers who would say, mobster pleads the fifth. There was the headline in the Daily News when I was a kid. That's when we had newspapers. That's when we had men. That's when we had a nation. Now we have nothing but corruption in the government media complex. VA gangsters plead fifth. What are they hiding? That would be my headline if I ran the New York Post. But now you understand why I am blacklisted in the New York Post, why I'm blacklisted on Fox News. Because I'm not part of the government media complex. It's that simple. But forget me for the minute. Just put me out of the picture. You don't even have to like me to agree with me. Do you want to live in a country where government officials can plead the Fifth Amendment? Is that the kind of country you thought you'd have when you talked about liberalism? Is this the kind of nation you thought you'd have under this phony Barack Obama, who is the silk smooth con man that you actually thought he was? Well, I think that I we'll stop at this point on that track and go on to another track. And that is so many other topics that you can't believe. We know about the immigrant crisis in Germany leading to a civil war. We know what could happen in America if they keep it up. But how about this? How about Obama releasing, 6,000 to 8,000 criminals out of the prisons, flooding the streets with gangsters and criminals, just in time for the 2016 election? Guess what he did now? Juvenile delinquents are now called justice-involved youth. I'm not creating this. This came to us from CNS News. They used to be called juvenile delinquents, but not anymore. The new term is justice-involved youth, a non-disparaging government-speak phrase that fits with the Obama administration's recent push to give people with criminal convictions a second chance to become productive citizens. Attorney General, that's a laugh unto itself, Al Sharpton Loretta Lynch. Attorney General Al Sharpton Loretta Lynch said, the Department of Injustice is committed to giving justice-involved youth the tools they need to become productive members of society. This is right out of George Orwell's Brave New World. She's using doublespeak.